Okay, it's time for this week's concentration. We have Jennifer Jacobus, the Senior Director of Operations from the San Diego Employers Association. A little bit of background on Jennifer. She moved to San Diego from Northern California in 1986 to attend SDSU, so welcome, fellow Aztec. She had full intentions of moving back to the Bay Area one day, but she met her husband, who's a San Diego native, and they stayed and raised their family in East San Diego. Jennifer landed her first real job at the Employers Association in 1988, where she has worked towards success in various positions for the association over the past 30 years. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jennifer, and take it away, Jennifer.
All right, thanks, Wade. All right, we all go with the screen share, right? Oops. All right. So thank you. I was switched with Janine Jansen because she needed to switch her concentration date. So I said, yeah, I'll do it. And then after Chip's concentration last week, I feel like I've been set up because his was so beautiful and all the great pictures and information. So stick with me on this one, right? Okay, so I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself and a little bit about SDEA. I noticed from a few of the concentrations that I have sat in so far that the execs start with sharing a little bit about their family. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. If I can get this to go now, where are we? All right, so this is my 16-year-old daughter. She's 16. She doesn't like to come out of her bedroom. She doesn't like to hang out with her parents or anything. So this is the best shot I could get of her that's recent. She's still doing homeschool, and this is what we see most of her, except for when she decides to come out once in a while and get something to eat. We get to have the pleasure of seeing her. Here she is at the beach with us. I put her up there up in the right-hand corner. One of the things, my husband, Dan, and we, for our fun and relaxing time, probably beach is our go-to. We have a jet ski, we like to hang out at the bay, but this is my relaxation spot. And yeah, so we had to prop in our daughter over here. On the very right-hand side is actually my husband's favorite pastime, which is craft brew drinking. He thinks he's a beer connoisseur. And I think secretly he wants to be one of those people on Instagram that has thousands of followers with all the pictures he takes of his beer that nobody cares about. Let's see what else we have here. I'm having trouble with this. Oh, there we go. This is really what we spent the last 11, 12 years of our life doing. Very young age, my daughter started playing softball, and whole family got very invested in this. So here we have her playing the hot corner, third base, and then her batting. She goes to Steel Canyon High School, and my husband has coached. I've served on the board at the for her rec. Kind of that tapered off when she got into travel ball in high school. But this is, people show all their vacation pictures and all the great places that they go to. But those of you who have kids in sports, and especially when you get to travel and all-stars, your summers, this is what your summers look like, right? You don't get to go to those fun beach locations, and this is where the focus is. Okay, so here is a legitimate picture of her. So I did convince her to to stand up for a Christmas picture for her grandparents, since I haven't seen my parents in a year and a half because of COVID, and they only live in Northern California. So she did it for Papa and Nana. She said, okay, we'll send them a Christmas picture. So my husband will be married for 25 years this October. And my daughter's going to be 17, and then of course that's me. This I thought was kind of fun. So when, talking about the how long I've worked at SDEA, and I started working here in 1988. So I found this picture of myself with my fun hair, sitting at the front desk and, doing what I did back then. And then I decided to add this picture over here on the right. There's probably a few people in here, not many, but maybe a few of you that have been around for longer that will recognize Tom Puffer in the very back, and then even Joe Simca, who were long members of the Executive Association, and however long SDEA, which I should probably know that, how long SDEA has been a part of execs throughout the years. Again, like I said, starting when I started here in '88, Tom was in it. So, and I also enjoyed this picture of myself with my big hair and big shoulder pads. Okay, one more historic thing here. Now this I came across, which I thought was kind of fun. Tom Puffer, back in 1990, won the leads contest in execs, and this was the grand prize. So the contest winner got a billboard, and I believe it was on the 8 freeway. And so, yes, here's a picture of it. Our logo has changed dramatically over the years, but I thought that was kind of interesting, and interesting tying it into the Executive Association. Okay, so let me tell you guys a little bit about SDEA. SDEA, so we've been around since 1914, so over 100 years, and crazy to think that I've worked here for a third of that time. SDEA's main focus is that we are an HR consulting firm. We're a membership organization. We're a nonprofit 501c6. Focus is helping our membership base with their HR challenges, employer-employee relations, interpretation of federal and state laws. We do a lot of training, which I will share a little bit with you as well. But I thought I would give you guys kind of a little bit of a taste of the types of questions and things that are more specific, things that we can help SDEA with, or the SDEA can help you all with. One of the main things, so as far as the consultation is concerned, probably one of the biggest areas that trips up employers, regardless of the size of your company, is leaves of absences. What type of leave do we have to give, for how long, what's the paperwork is required, what kind of questions can I ask our employee? Earlier this year, in January of 2021, there was a huge leave change in the legislation that affects small employers. So there's a leave law called the California Family Rights Act, or CFRA, because HR has to have everything in acronyms. CFRA, previous to January 2021, only applied to companies that had 50, so 50 or more employees. January 2021, this dropped down to it now applies to any company that has 5 or more employees. And so this was a big change, obviously, for smaller employers that may, under certain circumstances, have to allow a job protected leave for up to 12 weeks. So big change, and our membership base is made up predominantly of smaller employers. So helping them through this transition of what their policies need to look like, understanding the law, what they have to do. Pregnancy disability leave is one of the most complex issues, believe it or not, as far as a leave of absence. Part of the thing in California, I know at one time we used to have this leave checklist of 17 leaves, so I'm sure it's up to at least 20 now. And a lot of these leaves can run concurrently. So that becomes challenging and obviously complex and confusing for a lot of employers. And it specifically happens with pregnancy disability leave. So it is, just last Friday, I had 2 Zoom calls, even though we're all tired of Zoom, of literally walking step by step with an employer on their employee's pregnancy disability leave. Leave is an accommodation. An employee can't work for medical reasons, so that they need a leave of absence as a medical accommodation. Leaves I have to do again with the required forms. What notices do I have to give? And what about those employees who won't return to work after a leave of absence? So where SDEA can help, we can help review your current policies and procedures. We can help provide you with a newly mandated leave policy, specifically compliant with the new CFRA laws. We can review the notices that you're providing to your employees, any correspondence, or we can provide you with the notices and correspondence, and we can create those for you. We can walk you through the interactive process that is, when we talk about leave as an accommodation, that is a mandatory part of the ADA is looking at leave as an accommodation. SDEA also has this other area services that we offer under the umbrella of HR on loan. And under that system, we can actually administer a leave of absence for you. Wage and hour, one of the biggest things, right? We've seen some really big legislation in the past few months. Employees working off the clock has kind of been a new thing. A lot of it has to do with COVID, and I know we're kind of transitioning out of this, but at the beginning, for either those essential employers that always had their employees coming in, or when employees were starting to come back in, maybe last summer, and we were doing the temperature checks and the surveys, are you sick? Have you been around anybody that's sick? Have you traveled? That all that time needs to be compensable, and some employers were not paying their employees for that time. There was a big case with bag checks of some of the retail businesses. Their employees, it's pretty standard if you're retail and your employees are clocking out at the end of the day that they do a bag check. If that employee has to sit around and wait for the manager to wrap up dealing with a customer, or it's closing time and there's kind of a line of people needing bag checks, that time is compensable. So we're starting to see some case law on that. De minimis work, rounding practices. De minimis, we used to be able to say, oh, it's a couple minutes here or there, clocking in early or leaving, or clocking in late at the end of the day. Couple minutes here or there, it's de minimis. We don't really need to count that. State of California has come back and said, nope, that California cares about those small increments of work and every minute counts. Huge new case law with rounding practices for meal periods that we've been talking about just in the past few months. Meal and rest periods, employees not taking them on time, weren't working through them. The premium that needs to be associated with that, reporting time pay for your non-exempt employees. How can SDEA help in these areas? Consultation, help you interpret the law, which is not always the easiest. I always think wage and hour in California, I feel, is pretty black and white, but that's pretty much it. All the leaves, accommodations, employee relations, very gray. We can help review your handbook or specific policies and procedures. We can conduct an HR review to see what your policies are, especially your timekeeping practices, any wage and hour issues. We can help you create memos, notices to employees that help really, nail down what your policy is, what the requirements are, to put it in writing for those employees. Discipline and termination is another big area of phone calls that we get from our employers, whether they're dealing with an employee that is somebody that has poor performance or poor attendance. The employee isn't up to par. We need to discipline them. Employees with poor attitudes, those are probably one of the harder things to deal with. The subjective versus the objective, and being able to have a conversation with the employee, document that, and really turn it around so that it's something specific to the individual's job. And we can help walk you through that. You call us up and say, hey, I got this employee, has got a crappy attitude, it's affecting the rest of the department. We're going to ask you the kind of questions, what do you mean by crappy attitude? Because it's almost always going to be associated with teamwork, some sort of a communication where we're able to help you, provide you some words and some language to sit down and have a conversation with that employee. Very popular one, when a member of management or a supervisor walks into your office and says, hey, this employee's got to go. I'm done with them. They're a horrible employee. And this is the first we've heard about it, right? What do you mean? And we ask, what's the documentation look like? And there is little to no documentation, but we're ready to terminate this employee. That's where, we can come in and help. Questions on termination paperwork, timing of final paychecks, harassment, discrimination complaints. Dealing with this right now, one of our members I talked to on Friday afternoon and had an employee, a female employee that was resigning. And during her notice period of, hey, I'm giving you my 2 weeks notice, let the employer know that she was being harassed. It was not the reason for her resignation, but she let the employer know, and the employer started their initial process of even though the employee is leaving, doesn't mean the problem goes away, but us helping to walk them through this. Okay, this is what we need to do for a harassment investigation. Here's some questions. Let's get started on this process. And talking with them this morning, where we're kind of at a he said, she said, which is always fun. When there's no witnesses, there's no documentation, it is like she has a completely different story than what he does. So we're having to dig a little deeper. We may get an attorney involved in this one, but these are some of the common things that we deal with here at SDEA. How can we help in these areas? We are good at asking great questions before you make a termination decision, really deciding if you're ready. Thinking of those things, are there any red flags? Is there a potential for litigation? Did this person just come back from some sort of a job protected leave? Have they recently filed a workers' comp? Are they in a protected category, which may have absolutely nothing to do with the termination, but it is something we want to take into consideration when we're thinking about the end game here. When it comes to discipline and termination, we can review your documentation. We can review your write-ups. I am great at editing write-ups and documentation. I will have an employer send me over, okay, can you look at my write-up? And they send me, 4 paragraphs of documentation, and I send them back a paragraph and a half because they're very emotional in it, right? They are emotionally attached. They know this employee at a personal level. I don't. I'm removed from the situation. So I'm going to edit your documents and say, let's stick to the facts. We're going to keep your feelings out of this. We're going to be able to approach these employees in a business manner and focus on the essential functions of the job and what is required. We can help coach you through a termination process. We have actually sat through terminations in the past. It's not something we do on a regular basis. Of course, it's always best for the employer to do the termination, but sometimes that isn't always feasible, but we can certainly help coach you. Terminations are crummy. Even when you are really know it's the best thing and you really want this employee to be gone from your business, it is still a tough process. So even just having somebody to bounce things off, to do role play, to think worst case scenarios through to help you prepare for the termination the best you can. If we get a really ugly termination or something that could be potentially litigious, we can definitely bring up the attorney if needed and get some additional consultation from them. This is the last area I'll talk about before I move on to some of the other specifics of SDEA, but naturally over the last year and a half, this has probably been the biggest area that SDEA has assisted our members in. You guys all being in business and business owners and things like that, we don't need to tell you how trying obviously the last year and a half was, but it was very, very emotional for a lot of our members. And one of the things I'll talk about in a slide here is kind of the relationship building that we do, but especially from an HR perspective and the laws, especially in the first, 7-8 months that were literally changing on a daily basis. And what we knew you know, at end of day on Tuesday was completely at the beginning, different at the beginning of the day on Wednesday. We were there during that process for our members to help them work with, you know, the emergency paid sick leave and the emergency extended FMLA and what that looked like under the federal process. You know, we don't understand it. We're getting it thrown at us at a minute's notice where these things were going into effect almost immediately. Dealing with the payroll tax credits that were associated with those leaves of absences. The most recent leave in that went into effect on March 29th, but was retroactive back to January 1, was the supplemental paid sick leave, which is specific to California, different than the emergency paid sick leave and the extended FMLA. Cal OSHA has their own set of requirements during this period of time, as far as contacting the county and other jurisdictions within San Diego, the notice, the testing, all the stuff that we had to do, even just under the umbrella of the California's OSHA. Getting a return to work, which good news, that is what we're dealing with a lot now, helping our employers make those determinations when they can require employees to return to work. Dealing with those employees who don't want to come back, who are refusing to come back. Telecommuting was a big thing over the past, you know, year and a half. You know, looking at now, big question about mandating vaccines for our employees to come back to work. Can it be mandatory? Can we make it mandatory? Can we ask about vaccines? Can we ask if they've gotten it? And then, of course, the mask conversation, which you guys were having earlier. And as Miguel stated, you know, some employers are going to be making their own decisions. I was on the phone this morning for about almost half an hour with one of our members that is a karate studio. And they have a set of parents at one location that are fine with whether they wear masks or not, but they have parents at a different location that are freaking out. And, you know, because children haven't been vaccinated, right? And I think we're kind of unsure on how it affects them exactly. But this employer, you know, right now in San Diego County in California, we're a little bit different than the CDC, where Governor Newsom is saying we're going to stick with the masks, I think, until at least June. But even then, employers are still going to be able to make their own decisions on whether they want to require masks or not. I always say it's the same as no shirt, no shoes, no service. If that's going to be your policy, that's going to be your policy. So during COVID, keep up with all the COVID leaves requirements so that you don't have to. We're here doing that. I mean, like I said, it was switching on a day-to-day basis. So we were here for our members saying, nope, yep, this changed. I think it's on this slide, we were doing tons of free roundtables during this period of time, whether it was Molly and I, or we were getting the attorney on to kind of do some more from the legal perspective. And we had a couple a month, you know, our blogs, our newsletters that we were sending out. We were creating sample policies on the go to help our members that were specific to COVID. Leave request forms that were specific to COVID. You know, there's lots of things that we were unable to ask during that period of time. So there are ways to put things on a leave of absence request form that are going to make it so the employee has to be a little bit accountable anyhow. Helping our employees make decisions on return to work, develop correspondence, and then of course interpret the law on vaccines. And then, does anybody really know if we have to wear a mask or not? It's the unanswered question. So what all is included in SDEA membership? Membership, we have unlimited consultation with a staff of experts. So you can call anytime during regular business hours, as often as you want. There's not a limited number of calls or hours or anything like that. We are not attorneys ourselves, but we do have an employment law attorney on retainer. It's Chris Olmstead from Ogletree Deacons. He's very well known, especially kind of in the HR arena. He does go out and speak to different associations. We like Chris because he, do we have attorneys in the group? I don't know, but he speaks employer language, where he's there to help the employer, and we're going to focus on what's best for the employer, and it's not a lot of legalese. So he's a great guy to work with. So we have him on retainer. So if one of our members, if it's something maybe that one of our consultants are a little iffy on, maybe we should kind of get some legal interpretation in here, that we can reach out to Chris and have that conversation. Or we offer consultation as included in the membership, where our members, and a referral basis where we can refer the member to speak to Chris directly. So, our membership dues are pretty low when you think about what you would pay to consult with an employment law attorney. I mean, hopefully you don't have to do that, but that would easily cover your membership benefits for the year. When an employer joins, we can come on site, and yes, we were even doing that during the pandemic, not a lot, but we will still do that. We'll come on site and do an employment practices review, and we're making sure you have your posters posted. We'll do a little Q&A on your wage and hour policies, do a quick review of the employee handbook. It's not a full audit. Look at some personnel files, a check stub, your I-9s, just to make sure that we're seeing any red flags, that we can address those from the beginning. We offer documents, templates on our SDEA website. We do lots of training, and a lot of our training is discounted, of course, for members, and some of it is complimentary. I do management training, certificate prep, roundtables, and then our members are also eligible for discounted project work, like a handbook review, creating a handbook from scratch, onboarding your employees. I mentioned the leave of absence administration, performance management, talent acquisition. We can help with all that. What makes us different from other HR consulting services? We see lots of payroll companies that are offering an HR function, standalone HR consultants out there. We recognize the competition. And this is a conversation we have internally a lot with staff and our board, and just thinking about really what does set us apart. And it all really comes back to the same thing over and over again, and it is about building the personal relationships. And it may seem small, or like, does that really set you apart? But we feel really strongly about this. We had one of our members comment just a couple weeks ago when Deanna answered the phone, and she said, "I'm so glad you guys still answer the phone. You're not going into a system where you leave a message and we get back to you later. You're not going into a call center. You have to give your account number." And 9 times out of 10, when we pick up the phone, we're going to know who you are, and we're going to remember the conversation we had with you last time. I remember what's going on with your mother's illness. I remember your vacation that you were just on. I know that you were just visiting your grandchildren. I mean, those are the types of relationships that we really, really pride ourselves on developing, so that we all have that personal connection in working with SDEA. I just talked about this. Am I limited to a number of calls I can make? No. Backgrounds for our SDEA consultants. We have a combined 50 years of human resources experience. So like I said, we're not attorneys, but we do have our certifications. There's national HR certifications, state certifications, and like a lot of other professions, we are constantly, not even just keeping up our recertification, but educating ourselves and going through education and training ourselves, so we are able to provide our members with the most up-to-date and current information. What kinds of companies does SDE help? Any company that has employees can be a member of SDEA. I mean, it really is as simple as that. SDEA, again, the makeup of San Diego in general is predominantly smaller employers, but SDEA a lot of times works directly with the owner of the president of the company, because they're small. We may work with the office manager that's been delegated HR. We aren't there to replace an HR professional. So a company that already has HR staff and HR manager, we're there to be their partner, take up the research work for them, provide them policies, let them focus on other parts of the business where we can pick up some of that more time-consuming project work. Training that SDEA offers, and I mentioned this a little bit in another slide, but there is the mandatory harassment prevention training. So remember, anybody that has 5 or more employees, your employees must be trained every 2 years. It's mandatory in the state of California. So SDEA offers this. We were always doing this in part in Zoom format. Of course, it's quadrupled over the last year. But we also have public classes that we will get back to hopefully soon doing here on site, but we can go to your location and do a harassment training just for your company as well. We do different variations of management and leadership training that we can bring on site, or we have here at SDEA, or we're doing on Zoom. The prep courses for the federal and state certification that we have ourselves, we help individuals prepare to take these exams. The exams they're tough. They're a big deal. Many companies, or I'm sorry, individuals sitting to sit for the exam study. I'm not trying to compare it to the bar or anything, but they study for months to prepare. I think in the general overall pass rate is maybe in the high 60s, low 70s, and SDEA's is in the 80s because our instructors are fabulous. We did do different variations of compliance training, soft skills training. We have an annual and mid-year employment law updates, attorney roundtables. Diversity and inclusion training was new training that we developed that was very popular, that we developed last year. And brand new program that we're doing right now is managing a remote workforce, because a lot of companies, as we're hearing, may not be going back to the office. Thank you to, and I hope I went through the list that I did not leave anybody out here, but thanking those who are current members of SDEA. The Executives Association as a general is a member of SDEA, fully promoted, Better Business Bureau, Copper Electric, Ideal Plumbing. They were members for years and they just came back last week. So thank you, Ideal. Pine Pools, we've been working a lot with. Newman Windows, we do a lot of work with them. Best Rate Repair Services is sending somebody through our training class right now. Sloan Electric, Frost Hardwood Lumber, Mail Management Group. And we also have a couple board members in here. Ellis Smith and Tim Frazier are members on SDEA's board, so thank you to them. Leads for SDEA. If you were hearing any of your colleagues saying things like this, gee, I haven't had my handbook reviewed in a couple of years. When it comes to HR and all the employment laws, I'm afraid of what I don't know. Leaves of absences are so complicated in California. I need to provide my mandatory harassment training, and I don't want it to be dry and boring, because ours is not. I'm losing sleep over the employee issue I'm having, and I think it's going to turn into a termination. I've had an employee out on a leave of absence for 4 months now. I don't know how much longer I need to let them stay out. We're too small to have an HR manager, but we need help. If you're hearing any of your colleagues, other employers, people you work with, that you network with saying this, refer them over to SDEA. If the companies like trade associations, if they're looking for a speaker, if we can get in front of people, we love to do things like that. We can go in and talk about some sort of an employment law topic, and that kind of gets them a connection with the SDEA. Other companies we can partner with. I know we're Execs is looking for bookkeepers. That is a great partner for SDEA, CPAs, etc. So that's it for me.